Are you here alone? That was what they wanted to know. And I'm going to be honest with you, my very first instinct was not to answer it, or at least not to tell the truth. Because here's the thing, when you are a woman who travels by herself, who does a lot of life solo, you learn something very quickly, that it is a risk to tell people that you're alone. It is not a neutral piece of information. Telling them you're alone can be the difference between somebody leaving you alone or somebody determining that you are an easy target because you're by yourself. So, when a stranger asks me if I'm by myself, an alarm goes off in my body and I pause and I start doing the math and I'm like, why are you asking? Who's asking? What's your motive here? So that was the first thing. It was the caution, it was that reflex. But underneath that, there was a second thing happening. And this was about what being alone said about me. Not physically, but relationally. Like, what kind of person ends up hurt in the mud and nobody's there for them? And that question, that "Are you here alone?" It was about to crack something wide open in me that I have been protecting for a very, very long time. Hello, my powerful people. This is the Info Power Podcast, and I'm your host, Jasmine Conway. So last week, I told you about the Spartan race, the fall, the injury, the whole move your foot of it all. And at the end of that episode, I told you something. I told you that getting back up off the ground, as hard as that was, it was actually not the hardest part. The hardest part came right afterwards. The hardest part was admitting to other people that I was not going to be able to finish that race on my own and that I needed someone. And I told you that we were going to get into why that was so hard, why raising your hand and saying, I need help, can somehow feel worse than the actual injury, and why so many of us would honestly rather hurt in silence and let somebody else see us needing something. So that's where we're going today. And before I go any further, I want to talk to somebody specific. So maybe this is you. Maybe you are the strong friend, the one who always has it handled, the one who everyone else calls when their life is falling apart. But when your life falls apart, you go quiet, you disappear, you handle it by yourself in a room when the door is closed and nobody can see. Or maybe you're the one who just keeps this running tab in your head. Like, somebody does something for you and you can't rest until you have paid them back. You don't even let people buy you lunch without, that knot showing up in your stomach, remembering that you're going to owe them something. Or maybe you're going through something hard right now and there are people in your life who would show up for you in a heartbeat, but you haven't told them because you don't want to be a burden. You don't want to be too much. If that is you, stay with me today because this whole episode is for you. So there is something that I have figured out about myself. Okay. Nobody sits down one day and decides, all right, I'm going to build my entire identity around not needing people. That's not how it happens. It happens slow. You just become the one who handles stuff, the one who figures it out, the one who doesn't ask for much. And after years of that, it stops feeling like a habit and it starts feeling like who you are. But underneath it, there is usually this whole other story that is going on in the background of your head. And it's almost like this accounting system where if somebody gives you something, you should be able to give it right back. If you're going to take up space, you better have a good reason. If you help me, okay, well, now I owe you. And you don't even notice it most of the time, but it's there. It is always there, and it is running the whole show and the exact moments when you actually need someone. So let me take you back to the mud. Okay. I fall, and 1 second I'm moving, and the next second I'm in the mud on the ground. And there's this half of a second where my body knew that something was wrong before my brain even had the chance to catch up to it. And there was this sharp, specific kind of pain that told me very quickly that this is not going to be a walk it off kind of situation. And so the people came fast, the staff came fast. There were other racers, total strangers. They're all concerned, they're asking questions. And all I could say was just, let me see if I can get up first. I was scared out of my mind, but I wanted to see what I could do. I wanted to see what control I still had over the situation. And when I tried to stand, I was able to, but I wasn't able to bear much weight on my left leg. And in that moment, that's when everything shifted, because now other people are part of whether or not I keep going. And that's when one of them asks me, "Are you here alone?" And there it is again. It's that same reflex that I talked about in the beginning, that the one that says, don't hand a stranger this piece of information that could put you in a vulnerable situation. Except now I'm already on the ground. I'm hurt, and I can't just get up and walk away from the conversation. And this is the exact situation that reflex was built for. And I say, anyway, I say, yeah, I'm here by myself. And I don't think that I understood in that moment how much that cost me. Saying that one thing that I had trained myself to never say aloud to people that I had known for all of 90 seconds, if that much. At the one moment where I was the least able to protect myself. But I said it. And one of them looks at me and they go, if you want to finish, we will go at your pace. And I understood those words just fine. What I did not expect was how hard I pushed back on it internally. And it wasn't because I didn't need the help. I obviously needed it. But it was because it didn't fit into what I believed about how help was supposed to work. There was no history there. Nothing had been traded. They didn't owe me anything. There was no reason for these people to be involved in my race at all. And that's the thing that made it so strange. It took away the entire structure of how I leaned on being able to make sense of being helped. So let me ask you something. I want you to think about the last time you really, really did not want to ask someone for help. Maybe you needed a favor, a ride, someone to cover you. Go back there for a second. Go back there. There's that dread. And there's this whole story that's running in your head before you even open your mouth to ask. Maybe you tell yourself, oh, they're busy, or this is annoying, or they'll say yes, but they'll secretly be irritated or resentful, and now you're going to owe them. And we build up this ask into this enormous imposition or burden before a single word has even left our mouths. But here's something that has stuck with me that might help you. There is this whole pile of research on this, and it says that we are just really bad at predicting how people are actually going to respond. We assume that whatever we're asking is a way bigger deal than what it actually is, and that people are more likely to say no than they actually are. And we completely underestimate how good the other person tends to feel after they've helped. Researchers at places like Cornell and Stanford, they have run this in so many different ways, and they keep landing in the exact same spot, that we are overestimating the cost every single time. Because when you flip it around and you look at it from the other side, from the helper side, it is almost always the opposite. People like being able to help somebody. It makes them feel trusted. It makes them feel connected. It makes them feel like they did something that actually mattered today. So there's this gap that is already built into the moment, and we feel like we're taking something, and they feel like they're being let into something. And I'm telling you, that gap right there, that is where so much of our pointless suffering lives. And the part that made mine so much harder, it wasn't even the physical stuff. It was that this help had no strings on it. There was nothing for me to trade back. Because when help comes from someone that you already know, it kind of makes sense. There's history, there's this give and take, and you will eventually figure it all out. But when it comes from someone who owes you absolutely nothing and you owe them nothing, the whole system just breaks down, and you're just left standing there receiving with no sort of box to put it in. And you know who I think about when I think about all of this? Michael Phelps. So after the Olympics, Michael Phelps goes through these long stretches of depression, and he feels so isolated, and he just sat on it for a long time, not telling anyone. And here's the angle that gets me, right? It's so easy to assume that he struggled despite being the best. Like, his success was the good part, and the depression was just some separate thing that happened off to the side. But the way that he has talked about it, those two things are completely tangled up together. The isolation came partly because of how capable he was. Because when you're the person who delivers, the person who everybody counts on, the one who's supposed to have it all handled, that very thing becomes the reason that you don't say a word, that you don't raise your hand and ask for help. Because who do you even go to? You're the one that people lean on. And admitting that you're drowning, it doesn't fit into the role that everybody, including you, have agreed to play. It wasn't because help wasn't there, because it wasn't available, but it was because being capable had turned into this cage for him. And when he finally talked about what changed, he didn't describe it as like fixing something that was broken. He described it as just putting it down, stopping the effort of holding it all in by himself. And that trap that he was in, that's the exact one that I'm talking about, where being capable enough convinces you that you are supposed to do it by yourself. And I used to believe that too. Like, I had this entire identity built on being independent. And to be fair, it worked for me and it worked a lot of the times. But moments like that race, they expose something, because being capable and being isolated are not the same thing. And the longer that you let those two blur together, the harder it is to let any support get in, even when support is the only reason that you get to keep going. So I used to think that strength meant not needing anyone. And I don't believe that anymore. I don't even believe it a little bit. Strength is being able to be honest about what you need. It is looking at what is right in front of you and telling the truth about what you can handle on your own and what you can't. And then actually doing something about it instead of pretending. And I want to take that a step further, because this right here, this is the whole heart of In Full Power. Okay. For the longest time, if you had asked me to picture a woman standing in her full power, I would have described someone who didn't need anyone, someone who had it all handled, all figured out, who could take on any obstacle, any course, any fall, and get herself up and over it completely on her own. That was the picture that I had in my head. Powerful meant solo, powerful meant independent, powerful meant completely untouchable. But I'm telling you that laying in that mud, injured, and letting three strangers slow all the way down just to walk me to a finish line that I couldn't reach by myself, I think that might have been one of the most in full power moments of my entire life. And it looked nothing like that original picture that I had in my head. There was no flexing, there was no doing it on my own. It was just me finally letting myself be carried for a while. And somehow that was power. Not the not needing, but the letting people in. Because here's what I had completely backwards. Full power was never about not needing anyone. That's not power. That is just being alone with a whole lot of extra steps. It's harder. Full power is being whole enough and honest enough to let people all the way in, to be held, and to keep going because of them, not in spite of them. So let me tell you the thing that I wish somebody had said to me a whole lot sooner. And I really want you to hear me on this one. You do not have to earn it. You deserve support simply because you are a human being who needs it sometimes. And that is reason enough. You do not have to earn it. You are entitled to lean on the people in your life without proving that you have paid some sort of invisible debt or paid into some sort of account. And you should not have to fall into the mud in front of strangers before you finally let someone hold you up. Because there are a whole lot of people walking around right now believing the exact opposite, believing that help is a transaction, that if you don't pay in, you don't get to collect. But some things were never meant to be earned. Some things are just offered. And the real work, the actual work, is letting yourself receive them instead of fighting the entire way. And here's the thing that really flipped it for me. I have a friend who ran a half marathon, and he wasn't going to tell a single person about it until the race was already over and done with, because he didn't want to inconvenience anyone, and he didn't want anyone to feel obligated to come and support him. And when he told me that, you want to know what my first and honest reaction was? It was, are you kidding me? Like, it would be an honor to show up for you, to stand on the side of a course that you trained months for, and to lose my voice while cheering you on. I would love to hand you a fraction of what those strangers handed to me when I was out there in the mud by myself. And it's so interesting because he had looked at his own race and he saw a burden that he would be putting on people if he told them about it. And I looked at that exact same race and I saw a gift that I was being shut out of. So just look at that gap for a second, because you're standing on both sides of it. When the people you love need you, you call it an honor. But when you need them, you call it a burden. That's the same situation. It's just on completely two different sides of the coin. And you got to stop doing that to yourself. I need you to hear me. You deserve to be on the receiving end of that honor too. You shouldn't have to do these big, hard, and beautiful things in your life with no one watching just because you're too busy trying not to be a bother to anyone. The people who love you, they want to be let in. So let them in. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like any of this comes easy to me, because it does not. And let me just tell you how much it does not. At the very beginning of this year, I made a bingo card, and it's like not a list of goals. It's more so a list of things that I want to experience, to try, to live. Try this, go here, feel that. And one of the squares right in the middle of the card says, ask for help. I had to put ask for help on my bingo card, y'all, right next to big trips and bucket list experiences, because that is honestly how hard this is for me. I might have to turn it into a literal game just to remind myself to do it. And so this week, I am filling in my square right alongside you, which brings us to your power practice. And it's small on purpose. I want you to ask one person for one thing that you would normally just handle yourself. That's it. Ask somebody to grab something for you. Ask for a hand in carrying something heavy. Ask for a coworker to look over the thing before you send it. Pick the exact kind of ask that you would usually just wave off and say, no, I got this. And then I want you to watch two things. Number one, I want you to watch that little voice that pipes up in your head the second that you even think about asking. The one that is creating this whole cost benefit analysis on just a small favor. And I want you to notice it. You don't have to argue with it. I just want you to catch it in the act. And number two, I want you to watch how the person that you're asking for help actually responds. And not in the worst case scenario version in your mind, but how they actually react, how they really react. And I would put money on it that most of the time you are going to find that same gap that I keep talking about, how the ask was so much smaller than your brain made it out to be. And the other person, they were probably glad that you asked, maybe even a little bit honored. So try it this week, just one time, and see what happens. Because here is what I know now that I did not know when I was lying in that mud. What those people gave me out there, it was not just a hand up. It was them choosing to become part of something that I had already decided was mine to finish alone. And the second that I let them in, and the second that I stopped fighting it, that finish line stopped becoming something that I survived by myself, and it became something that we did together. And I promise you, I did not lose one single ounce of power in that. Letting them in, letting them help me cross the finish line was the power. So, wherever you are today, if you are the strong friend, if you are the one keeping the tab, if you are the one going through something right now that you haven't told anybody about, I need you to hear me say this with my whole chest. You were never meant to do this all alone. Needing people does not make you weak. It makes you human. And letting them in and allowing yourself to receive help, that might just be the most powerful thing you've done all year. That's what it means to be in full power. So before I let you go, taking that help, that was the part that I could see. But it also cracked open a much bigger question that I didn't have an answer for yet. Because if that support isn't something that you earn, and if it's just there and it's offered and there's no scoreboard, then what is it even? Like, what's actually holding us all together if it's not the trading back and forth that I had assumed it was my whole life? And the answer that I found, it kind of changed the way that I see everything, because it made me question this story that I think most of us have been sold, that the strongest people, the most successful people, the one who really make it, they did it on their own by themselves and they're self-made. And I'm going to tell you next week why I don't believe that anymore. But until then, you keep moving forward, you stay powerful, and I'll see you right back here next week. If this resonated with you, share it with another powerful person who needs to hear it. I'm Jasmine Conway. This is the In Full Power Podcast. I'll talk to you next time.